Everyone called it the Forest of No Return, and they were right. No one who entered ever came back, not soldiers, not scouts, not traitors, but Kieran still walked in. He wasn't a hero, not really. He was just a repair tech sent to find a missing supply drone. The drone had crashed near the edge of the forest 2 days ago. Command told him not to go alone, but the others were too scared, so he packed light, carried a stun pistol, and stepped into the fog. The trees were taller than buildings, with roots as thick as trucks. Strange lights floated between the branches. Sometimes he thought he saw eyes watching him, but when he turned nothing, still, he kept walking deeper. His tracker said the drone was only half a mile ahead. Then he heard a sound, not an animal, not a machine. It was crying, soft and broken. He followed it carefully, stepping over twisted vines and sharp thorns. And there she was, a girl curled behind a rock, her skin pale with a strange shimmer. She wasn't human. Pointed ears, violet eyes, and thin lines glowing softly along her arms. She looked young but older than a child. Blood ran down her leg, and 3 arrows were stuck in the ground around her. Kieran raised his hands. "Hey, it's okay. I won't hurt you." The girl flinched and tried to crawl backward, but she was too weak. I didn't think anyone would come," she whispered. Her voice was shaky. Her words slightly twisted, but clear enough. Kieran knelt slowly and checked her wound. An arrow had grazed her thigh, deep but not fatal. She looked terrified. "And not just from pain. Who did this to you?" he asked. "They did," she whispered, pointing to the dark trees. "They're still watching." That's when Kieran noticed more arrows, half buried in the moss, all pointing toward her. Then the air changed. A sharp sound like a string. Snapping instinct made him move. He dove in front of her just as an arrow flew toward them. It hit his shoulder hard and fast. He cried out, but stayed upright. The girl gasped, grabbing his arm. "Why?" she asked, eyes wide with shock. "Why protect me?" "I don't know," he said through the pain, "but I can't just leave you here." Another arrow flew. This one missed by inches. Kieran grabbed the girl and pulled her up. "Can you run?" She nodded, barely, and leaned on him as they moved. The forest was alive now. Shadows moved in the mist. Kieran didn't know where he was going, but the girl guided him with whispers. This way, through the roots. Faster, 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 faster. Behind them, voices spoke in a harsh alien tongue. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. They wanted her dead, and now they wanted him too. "Who are you?" he asked as they stumbled through a narrow gap between stone pillars. "Kalira," she said softly. He noticed how she held her side. She was bleeding more now. "My name's Kieran," he said. "We'll get out of here, I promise." But he wasn't sure. The fog grew thicker, the sounds louder, and the forest seemed to close in on them. Then they reached a clearing. Dead silence. Kalira fell to her knees, breathing hard. "We're close." "To the hidden path," she said, "but they will follow." Kieran looked at her. Then at the blood on his arm. He had stepped in front of arrows for her. And he didn't even know why, but he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a lost girl. Something much bigger was happening here, and the moment he protected her, he became part of it. "Rest for a second," he said, watching the trees. "I'll protect you." Even if it cost him more than just a scar. Kieran's shoulder burned. The arrow hadn't gone deep, but the pain was sharp and spreading fast. Still, he didn't stop. Not while Kalira. The alien girl leaned on him, her legs barely holding up behind them. The forest echoed with strange bird calls, but Kieran had already figured out the truth. Those weren't birds. They were signals, warnings, commands. The hunters were closing in. "Are they still following us?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder. Kalira didn't answer. She was breathing fast, eyes wide with fear. Blood dripped from her thigh and stained the mossy ground behind them. "We have to move," he said again, louder. "You said there's a hidden path." She nodded slowly. "Yes." Just ahead, behind the blue root tree. Kieran didn't know what a blue root tree looked like till he saw it. Massive, glowing roots reached out across the ground like the fingers of a giant hand. The trunk shimmered with a strange silver dust. It looked alive. They reached it just as another arrow flew past Kieran's ear. It struck the tree with a loud thunk, splitting bark and sending sparks into the fog. Kieran didn't even flinch. He pushed Kalira behind the tree and pulled out his small stun. "Pistol, 1 shot left, 1 chance, go." He whispered, "Find the path." "I'll hold them off." "No," she said, grabbing his wrist, "you'll die." "Then I'll die standing," he said with a small grin. "But not before you get out." Her eyes locked with his. She hesitated, then gave a soft nod and turned to search the tree's thick roots. Kieran crouched behind a rock, waiting, listening. He saw them first 3 shapes moving through the fog. They weren't like Kalira. Their armor was darker, their skin rougher, their eyes glowing red in the mist. They were soldiers, trained hunters. And they had curved bows in their hands, arrows already drawn. Kieran raised the pistol and fired. A blast of blue light hit one of the hunters square in the chest, sending him flying, but the pistol wind, its power cell blinking empty. Kieran tossed it aside and grabbed a heavy stick from the ground. One of the arrows came flying. He ducked just in time. Another arrow hit his leg, not deep, but enough to make him fall. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself up again. They were too close, too fast, too deadly. Then he heard her voice. "Kieran, this way?" Kalira had found the path, a narrow gap between thick stone walls covered in glowing moss. Without thinking, he limped toward her. Another arrow came, this one aimed straight at her. "No." Kieran shouted. He jumped again, using his body. Like a shield, the arrow hit his back, slicing through his jacket and skin. He cried out, but didn't fall. Instead, he grabbed Kalira and pulled her into the narrow path. Behind them, the hunters stopped. They didn't follow. Instead, they stood at the entrance, watching. Then, they vanished into the fog. Kieran and Kalira collapsed on the other side. Breathing hard, she looked at his wounds, her hands trembling. "You keep doing that," she whispered. "Taking arrows for me?" He gave a weak laugh. "Well, it's kinda my thing now." She pressed her hand to his chest gently. "Why?" she asked. "You don't even know me." He stared at her for a long moment, then said, "Because someone should care." Kyra looked down, silent. Then she reached into her belt pouch and pulled out a small glowing crystal. She held it to his wounds, and it began to glow brighter. His skin warmed, then cooled. The pain faded a little. Not gone, but better. "What is that?" he asked, his voice low, old tech. She replied, "Banned by my people. But I kept it." She looked him in the eyes. "I shouldn't trust you. But I do." Kieran leaned back, watching the fog swirl beyond the stone path. Something told him this wasn't over. Those hunters wouldn't give up so easily. And this girl Kalaru was more important than he'd first thought. "I think I just got myself into something big," he muttered. She nodded slowly. "You did, but," he added with a tired smile, "if the reward is worth every scar, I'll keep going." Kalira looked at him, and for the first time, she smiled, a real smile. They were still hunted, still wounded, still alone in an alien forest. But for now, they had each other. The fog felt thicker now. It clung to their skin like cold sweat, wrapping around them like a living thing. Kieran limped beside Kalira, his legs aching, his back still bleeding slowly beneath the cloth wrap. But he didn't complain. He had already taken 2 arrows for her. And he'd take more if needed. They were still alive, but they were not safe. The path splits up ahead. Karan looked forward. Kieran looked forward and saw what she meant. 3 tunnels carved into the mossy stone, each dark, each silent. Which one? He asked. Kalira closed her eyes and placed her hand against the wall. Tiny lights flickered beneath her skin, glowing like veins of fire under glass. The middle one, she said, eyes opening. It's less watched. Watched? He repeated. She nodded. The shadows here are not natural. Kieran didn't ask more. By now, he understood this place had rules he didn't know. And Kylira knew just enough to stay ahead of death, so he trusted her. They entered the middle path. It was narrow, and their footsteps echoed strangely. The air felt damp, like something had just breathed through here. Kalira reached for his hand. At first, Kieran thought she was afraid. But then he realized she was making sure he didn't step off the narrow trail carved in the stone floor. I can't see the edges, he said. You don't want to. She whispered. There are things waiting below. Kieran gripped her hand tighter. He didn't want to know what waited below. He just wanted to get out. But this path wasn't an escape. It was a test. Suddenly, a soft humming sound echoed through the tunnel. Kalira froze. Oh no, she breathed. They've sent a shadow beast. Kieran's heart raced. What's a shadow beast? Her answer was soft and terrifying. It humps noise, breath, warmth, but mostly fear. That was bad, because right now, Kieran was full of all 3. He reached slowly into his pouch and pulled out a heat pod, standard issue design too. Warm hands in cold terrain, he clicked it on and tossed it to the far side of the tunnel. Seconds later, something exploded from the darkness. A shape made of smoke and teeth slammed into the heat pod with a scream. The walls shook. The beast had no eyes, just a mouth full of long, twisted fangs. And it was fast. Run! Kalira shouted, breaking into a limb sprint. Kieran followed. They didn't look back. The beast tore through the tunnel behind them. Its scream rattling the stone. The path twisted downward, then suddenly opened into a large cavern. Strange. Glowing moss covered the ceiling, and giant mushrooms swayed like trees. Kalira pointed to a stone bridge crossing a black river. There, she cried. We have to get across before it follows. They ran, half jumping, half stumbling. Kieran's legs screamed with each step. Halfway across, the shadow beast leaped after them. Kalira reached the far side and turned. She pulled out a small silver disc and threw it at the bridge. The disc hit the stone and pulsed once. Boom. The bridge exploded behind Kieran just as he dove for the edge. He barely made it. Kalira grabbed his wrist, pulling him up as the rest of the bridge collapsed into the black river below. The beast howled, falling into the water, and vanished. Without a splash, silence returned. Kieran lay on the ground, gasping for breath. Kalira was kneeling beside him, her face pale and streaked with sweat. You saved us again, he whispered. She shook her head. No. You distracted it. You threw the heat pod. They stared at each other for a long second. Then she added softly, I've never met someone like you. Kieran gave a weak smile. Lucky you. Kalira smiled back, but it faded quickly. We're not done yet, she said, standing. There's a place not far from here. A sanctuary. A safe place. He asked. She hesitated. Safer than this. They began walking again, slower now. Kieran could feel the bruises beneath his skin. His arm was going numb, but every time Kalira looked at him, concerned. Grateful, he felt stronger. As they walked through the glowing cavern, he finally asked the question that had been building inside him. Why were they hunting you? Kalira's face went still. I broke a law, she said softly. A sacred one. What law? He asked. I saved someone I wasn't supposed to save, she answered. a child from an enemy clan. They called it betrayal, Kieran's brows furrowed. That's not betrayal. That's mercy. Not to them, she replied. Her voice bitter. To them, I'm a traitor. Kieran looked around at the beauty of the cavern and thought about the beast, about the arrows, the pain, the blood. Then maybe you need new people, he said quietly. She looked at him, her eyes soft. Maybe I've already found one. Asterisk, they reached a place where the cavern narrowed into a hallway of jagged crystal. Each step they took echoed through the glowing walls. Kylira moved slower now, holding her side. She was bleeding again, even though she tried to hide it. Kieran saw it, and it made his jaw tighten. He didn't have any more bandages, only his own torn shirt. We need to stop, he said gently. Kylira shook her head. They'll find us if we rest too long. Let them. Kieran replied, kneeling down. You can't keep walking like this. She sat slowly against the wall. Her face pale from pain. Kieran wrapped her wound again. Using what little clean cloth he had left, his fingers trembled half from exhaustion, half from something else. Anger. He was angry that someone like her had to suffer for doing the right thing. They trained me to lead them, she said suddenly, her voice low. I was supposed to be their future queen. Kieran looked at her in surprise. Your royalty. I was, she whispered. But after I saved that child, they called me broken. That's not broken, he said. That's human. Kylira looked at him, confused. Human. Means you care, he said softly, even when it costs you everything. She smiled faintly, then her smile faded. They've sent my cousin after me, she said. He won't stop, not until I'm dead. Your own cousin? Kieran asked, shocked. She nodded. His name is Tralvin. He wears bone armor, hunts in silence, and never misses a shot. Kieran remembered the arrows, precise, fast, silent. He had felt them slice the air. Great, he muttered. Family? Issues with sharp weapons. Kylira gave a small laugh, then winced from the pain. Kieran stood and looked around the crystal tunnel. We need to keep moving, he said, but we'll take it slow. They walked again, side by side. The crystal tunnel soon opened into a chamber full of light. Floating stones hovered midair, glowing with soft blue energy. Strange symbols danced across the floor beneath their feet. Kylira paused, her eyes wide. This is an ancient sanctuary. Is it safe? Kieran asked. She hesitated. It depends. Only those with pure intentions can stay here without pain. Kieran looked around, half expecting the walls to light on fire, but nothing happened. He was still breathing. Still standing, Kylira smiled. You passed. That's a first, he joked. Usually I fail things on the first try. She stepped forward and knelt near one of the floating stones. I came here once when I was a child. She said, my mother told me only the worthy could find peace here. Kieran sat beside her, watching her fingers trace the glowing symbols. Do you think you're still worthy? He asked. She looked at him with tired eyes. I don't know, she said, but you walked into danger for someone you didn't even know. He shrugged. I guess I'm just stubborn. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the sanctuary. Footsteps, slow and heavy. Kylira's face went pale. He's here, she whispered. Tralvin. Kieran stood, body tense. He had no weapon left, only a broken stun pistol and his fists. But he wasn't going to let her die, not now. Not ever. From the shadows stepped a tall figure in black and white bone armor. His face was hidden beneath a mask shaped like a skull. A longbow was strapped to his back, and a blade rested at his side. I gave you mercy, cousin, the man said. Voice like cold steel, I told you to die quietly. But you ran. Kylira stood slowly, leaning on the wall for balance. I saved a child, Tralvin. That should never be a crime. You brought shame to our blood. He said, stepping closer. You broke the law, and now You bring a human into our sacred lands. Kieran stepped between them. If you want her, you'll have to go through me. Tralvin tilted his head, studying Kieran. A soft body with soft bones, he said. You bleed easily. Yeah, Kieran said, raising his fists, but I bleed on my own terms. Kalira reached out. Don't fight him. She whispered, you'll die. Kieran smiled without looking back. Then I'll die for the right reason. Tralvan reached for his blade, but the floating stones began to glow brighter. Pulsing with sudden heat, a loud humming filled the chamber. Shaking the walls, he stepped back in surprise. The sanctuary rejects you, Kalira said. Eyes wide, it senses your bloodlust. Cracks formed under Tralvan's feet, and the ground lit with fire-like light. He looked down, growled, and vanished into the shadows. Forced to retreat, Kieran lowered his fists. Heart racing, Kalira ran to him, gripping his arm tightly. You stood between me and death again. She whispered, you don't stop. He looked at her gently. Neither do you. The air had changed. The crystals no longer glowed bright. They flickered like dying fireflies. Kalira stood still, her body weak, but her mind alert. The sanctuary saved us, she said softly. But it won't do it again. Kieran nodded. Wiping dried blood from his hands, they had only one time, not peace. Tralvan was gone but not defeated, and he would return, smarter, stronger, more deadly. We can't stay here, Kieran said. Kalira pointed toward the far side of the chamber, where a cracked wall revealed a dark tunnel. There's a place beyond that path, she said, a hidden place. The exiles' home. Exiles? Kieran raised an eyebrow. Kalira gave a sad smile. Aliens like me cast out for refusing to follow cruel laws. Sounds like my kind of people, Kieran replied, helping her up. The tunnel was rough, and silent roots twisted across the stone floor. And glowing insects buzzed above their heads. Kalira moved slower now. She leaned on Kieran more with each step. He didn't mind. In fact, he held her tighter, like she might disappear if. He let go. Finally, they came to a thick iron door set into the stone. No lights, no symbols, just a handle covered in moss. Kalira stepped forward and whispered something in her own language. The door creaked open slowly, revealing firelight beyond. Dozens of eyes stared back at them, some glowing, some shadowed. Strange figures stood waiting. Tall insectoid aliens. Short-furred ones, and others that looked half-machine. They didn't speak, they just watched. Kalira raised her hand weakly. I am Kalira of the Cathari. She said, I seek shelter with the exiled. A tall alien with horns stepped forward, her voice deep and commanding. You bring a human, she said coldly. Why? He saved my life, Kalira answered, more than once. The crowd murmured, confused. Most had never seen a human before, not in person. Kieran felt the weight of their stares. He kept his chin high but stayed silent. The horned leader narrowed her eyes. Then he must prove himself, she said. We don't accept outsiders without trial. Kieran blinked. Trial? Kalira turned to him quickly, grabbing his arm. You don't have to, she whispered. I can beg them no. He said firmly, if this is what it takes to keep you safe, I'll do it. The leader nodded once. Bring him too. The bone pit. The crowd opened a path, leading down another tunnel. The smell changed earthy and metallic, like dried blood and dust. Torches lit a small stone arena surrounded by carvings and bones. In the center, a metal grate covered a pit too deep to see the bottom. This is the trial of bone, the horned woman said. No weapons, no help, no mercy. What's in there? Kieran asked. You'll see, she said with a thin smile. Kalira grabbed his hand tightly. You don't have to prove anything to me, she said, eyes full of fear, but Kieran smiled gently. I'm not doing it to prove anything. He said, I'm doing it because I don't want to lose you." He kissed her forehead softly and then stepped toward the pit. Without another word, the grate opened and he jumped in. The drop wasn't far, but the landing was hard. He rolled, came up fast, and froze. Something moved in the darkness, a shape larger than a man. Breathing heavily, it stepped forward 6. Legs, armor like skin, glowing yellow eyes. A creature born in the deep caves of this world, made for hunting and killing. It roared and charged. Kieran dodged left, barely missing a claw swipe. He grabbed a broken bone from the ground and swung it. Hitting the beast's shoulder, it howled but didn't stop. The fight was brutal. Kieran bled from his lip, his back. His arm, he was thrown once, nearly crushed twice. But he didn't stop. Every time he got up, he remembered Kaelira's face. The way she looked at him, not with fear, but hope. And that kept him on his feet. At last, the creature lunged down. Kieran slid beneath it, grabbing another bone spike and driving it up into the beast's neck. The creature roared, staggered, and then fell. Silence. The gate above opened slowly. Voices echoed down. The trial is past. They pulled him up, covered in blood and sweat. The horned leader watched him carefully, then nodded. "Human." She said, "You are welcome in the sanctuary." Kaelira ran to him and hugged him tightly. "You're insane," she whispered. "But you're mine." Kieran smiled. "Worth every scar." Kieran didn't sleep that night, even though he was safe, even though the beast was dead. His body rested on a soft cot. But his mind stayed inside the pit. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the creature's jaws, its claws, its eyes. And the moment he thought he'd die, Kaelira sat beside him, her fingers gently cleaning his wounds with warm cloth. She didn't speak much. She just stayed close. "It was enough. You're lucky," one of the exiles said, walking past. "No outsider ever made it out of the bone pit alive." "Guess I'm stubborn," Kieran muttered. Though his voice was thin, his back ached, his chest was wrapped tight, and his left arm barely moved. He wasn't the same man who had stepped into that trial. Something had changed. Inside him, Kaelira noticed it too. "You've gone quiet," she said gently. "I'm just tired." He lied, but she could see. "Through it, you left a part of yourself in that pit," she whispered. "Didn't you?" Kieran turned his head, looking at her glowing violet eyes. "Yeah," he said softly. "And I'm not sure I'll ever get it back." She leaned closer and placed her forehead against his. "Then I'll give you something better," she said. A piece of me, he didn't fully understand her words, but he felt them warm, deep, honest, and that was enough for now. The next morning, Kieran limped out into the exile camp. Dozens of aliens nodded at him, some curious, some respectful. He had become something else in their eyes, not just a visitor. But one of them, Kaelira, stood in the center of a wide hall carved into stone. The horned leader approached with a long robe in her hands. "You faced death with nothing but bones and courage," she said to Kieran, "and now you carry the scars of truth." She handed him the robe, black with silver threads, the symbol of the exiles stitched into the chest, a sign of acceptance. He took it silently, wearing it like armor. But peace didn't last long. A whisper reached the sanctuary. Scout returned with news. "The Cathari army marches," he said, breathing hard. "They come for Kaelira." And the human Kaelira's face went pale. "They've found us." The horned leader's face hardened. "They won't get past us easily," she said, "but you too must leave." Now, Kieran stood straight despite the pain. "I'm not running," Kaelira turned to him, panic rising in her voice. "You don't understand. Tralvan's leading them, and this time, he won't stop. I don't care." Kieran replied, his voice calm but firm. "If they want to take you, they'll have to go through me." Kaelira grabbed his hand. "You've done enough, Kieran," she whispered. "You gave more than anyone ever has. Even my own people." He looked at her and shook his head slowly. I didn't fight that beast just to run now. The horned leader stepped forward again. There may be a way, she said, to end this. Without more blood, everyone turned toward her. She continued, the ancient law of the first bond. Kalira gasped. That tradition was forgotten. It still exists in exile, the leader replied. And if the human agrees, he can claim you under it fully. Permanently, Kieran blinked. Claim. What does that mean? Kalira stepped closer to him, her face serious. It means, you would become my mate, my protector under law, and I would become yours. Kieran's mouth opened, then closed. You don't have to say yes, she whispered. But if you do, not even Tralvin can touch me without breaking. Ancient code, Kieran looked at her, his body aching, his mind tired, but his heart was clear. He had bled for her, fought for her, nearly died for her, and somehow, she had filled a space in him he didn't know was empty. I'm in, he said finally. Kalira's eyes filled with tears, not fear, not pain, but something deeper, hope. The horned leader lifted a ceremonial blade and placed it on both their shoulders in front of the exiled, she said, and the flame of truth. Let this bond be sealed. Kieran looked into Kalira's eyes as the words were spoken, and in that moment, he knew the trial hadn't broken him. It had rebuilt him. The sky above the sanctuary turned red. Storm clouds swirled like boiling smoke as the Cathari army surrounded the cliffs. They came with blades, bows, and fury in their hearts. Tralvin stood at the front tall, proud, deadly, but he did not attack. He waited, because by ancient law, he had to listen. Kalira and Kieran stood at the gate of the sanctuary, hand in hand. Their clothes were simple, but their bond was now sacred, marked by the ritual of the first bond. They were no longer just fugitives. They were united. The horned exile leader stood between them and the army, raising her voice by the law of the flame and the bones. They are bound as one, she called out. No blade shall touch her now. Unless you mean to start a war that will never end, Tralvin stepped forward slowly. His mask was off now. Kieran saw the face beneath its card, cold and angry. This is madness. Tralvin said a human cannot bind with our blood. The law says otherwise, Kalira replied, her voice strong despite the wind. And if you break it, your own people will turn against you. Tralvin's hand hovered over his sword, but he didn't draw it. Instead, he gave one last look at Kieran. You will regret this, human, he said quietly. Then he turned and walked away, one by one. The army followed him into the mists, disappearing without a fight. The threat was over. The silence that followed was heavy, and then filled with breath, relief, freedom. Kieran sat down on the stone steps, his body still aching. Kalira sat beside him, her hand gently brushing his bruised knuckles. You kept your promise, she whispered. You never let them take me. I meant every word, he said, smiling softly. But you saved me too. She tilted her head. How? I came into that forest looking for a broken machine, he said. But I found you instead. He paused, thinking. You gave me something I didn't know I needed. Kalira leaned closer, her voice low. And now I want to give something to you. He looked at her with curiosity. What could you give that I haven't already received? She smiled, stood up, and waved him to follow. Come with me, she said. There's something I've never shown anyone, not even my own people. Kieran followed her deep into the sanctuary tunnels. At the far end, hidden behind heavy vines and stone, was a glowing doorway. She touched the wall with her palm and whispered words he didn't understand. The stone opened like a blooming flower, revealing a hidden garden. Bright lights danced across the leaves, and soft wind stirred. The air at the center was a pool of clear blue water, and beside it, a glowing tree with silver fruit. "This is a sacred place," Kylira said. "Only the true bonded may enter." Kieran stepped forward slowly, amazed. He felt peace in his chest for the first time in weeks. Not just quiet, but real peace. Kylira picked one silver fruit from the tree and held it out. "This is for you," she said. "Our oldest gift, one that heals not the body, but the heart." He took it gently and stared at it. "Are you sure?" She smiled. "I'm sure." Kieran, he bit into the fruit, and warmth spread through him. Memories of the pit, the arrows, the fear, they didn't vanish, but they no longer hurt. They became part of him. Part of his story. He looked at her, eyes damp. "I've lost a lot in life," he said, "but I think I've just gained something greater." Kylira sat beside him and leaned her head against his shoulder. For the first time, she whispered, "I feel safe." They sat there for hours, just breathing, no more running, no more pain. Just the sound of wind through the silver leaves. Later, back in the sanctuary, the exiles gathered to honor them. Not as outsiders, but as family. Kieran stood with Kylira at his side, not just as her protector, but as her equal, her partner, her mate. And when someone asked him, was it worth it all, the scars, the blood, the danger? He smiled and gave only one answer. Every single scar was worth it for her